Hello and welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast. And today we are going to be taking a look at Hobbs and Shaw, which is part of the Fast and Furious franchise. Now, for those of y'all who don't know, Lee and I always had plans to do a movie podcast, and we had a false start when we tried to do one podcast review of Rogue One, and then Hobbs and Shaw was our second attempt. So we're pretty much going back to our roots and revisiting the movies that we reviewed the first time around, and we're going to do a much more proper job about that. But before we dive in, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and as always, thank you so much for tuning in. And let's dive in. Lee, how are you doing on this fine Sunday afternoon?
Probably better if I didn't have to rewatch Hobbs and Shaw this morning.
Worst 2 hours of your life, right?
I mean, like it is what it is, but I think I guess in the grand scheme of things, we're on to, as the time of recording this, because I'm sure there's more in the future. I think we have 10 Fast and Furious now. Is that correct?
I thought there were a lot more than that.
I meant like just the main series, not including like offshoots and everything else. I think there's 10.
Yeah, because like Hobbs and Shaw would be considered an offshoot, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like it's part of the universe, but it's
main. Yeah, it's not the main because I believe that there's 10 so far, and I know that there's more in there. So the fact that they felt the need to put this out is interesting to me, but I guess we got what we got, so we could get more screen time with Hobbs and Shaw, because that's what everyone was clamoring for. Was we wanted to see more of those two characters, and I guess we got that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, don't think I think I could have lived without this in my life. So I guess we'll kind of start off right, and we have this the kind of the cold opening, right? We got the character Hattie, who's played by Vanessa Kirby, and I really like Vanessa Kirby. I think she's great. Really enjoyed her in a lot of the stuff I've seen her in. I don't think she plays a very good action star. And the only reason I say that, it's because she looks like she's probably like 5'2" and weighs like 110 pounds. So it's really awkward when she has like all this gear on and everything, and she looks totally out of place with this whatever. I think she works for something, but it's just really weird to me that she's a part of this group. She looks very much out of place. And I guess they're trying to move this virus around, and she gets attacked by our villain, or at least one of the villains. So we get attacked by the villain Braxton, who's played by Idris Elba, who once again really like him. So we have the villain Idris Elba here attacks them, and Hattie's able to escape, but she injects herself with the virus, and this is how everything happens. And the only thing I could think of, what movie does that sound very familiar to you? What movie do you think about when you hear somebody injects themselves with a virus in order to keep it out of the villain's hands?
Ooh, there are plenty that I've lost count throughout the years.
That's fair, right? So the first thing that jumped in my mind was Mission Impossible 2. Right, you remember Mission Impossible 2, right?
Where that's right. That's right. Oddly enough, Vanessa Kirby, was in a recent Mission Impossible's film that we reviewed last year.
Yes, and that's what kind of got me on that train of thought, because I was thinking about Mission Impossible. And I'm like, oh wait, is that the plot of Mission Impossible 2? Like, I know it doesn't happen right at the beginning, but like, Tom Cruise, kind of hires this person that is kind of, I guess, a plant against the villain, and she ends up ejecting herself and everything. So I'm like, okay, well, kind of give me Mission Impossible vibes. Probably not the Mission Impossible you want to be copying off of, because I think MI2 is probably one of the weakest ones, if not the weakest one. But, you do you, movie franchise. So that's how it starts off, right? So you kind of get this, kind of opening, and after that, we get to meet our two title characters. We got Hobbs, played by The Rock, and Shaw, played by Jason Statham. And we have this, I guess, split shot that they do of them, I guess, kicking people's asses. All I know is Hobbs um, likes to use the uh, what the hell was he using? The little tattoo thing.
Yeah, the needle.
And
Yeah.
yeah, thank you, tattoo needle, thank you. And Shaw just likes to beat people up with champagne bottles. So we have our kind of bland opening sequence where we just need to get some action involved with it. We also get to meet Ryan Reynolds, who plays Ryan Reynolds. I don't remember what his character name is. I'm sure he had one. It is just Ryan Reynolds being Ryan Reynolds, though. And I like how he kind of interrupts this breakfast that Hobbs is having with his daughter. I believe the daughter was 9 years old, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And he just kind of divulges on the group that, hey, we got to stop this virus because this virus is going to kill everybody. And I was thinking to myself, is this like supposed to be humorous that he's sharing all this information with this 9-year-old girl? Because I don't know about you, I'm pretty sure if I was 9 and I found out that there was a virus that was going to destroy the world, I'd be shitting my pants as a 9-year-old. She kind of takes it in stride. But I don't know. That's just me. I don't know how I feel about that. It was just kind of weird. But that's what we have happening. So we have Hobbs and Shaw. They kind of have this team up, and obviously it's just like kind of like a bad buddy cop film, where we have Hobbs and Shaw. They're just sitting there bickering and fighting as we get to meet them, and the dialogue is just it's bad. Like it's just they don't have. I like The Rock, right? I think he's decent, especially on the role he's doing. Jason Statham, he can be okay, but the two of them together, they just don't have any good chemistry. And I think the dialogue was just, it was just like a bunch of like high schoolers wrote it. I don't know. How'd you feel about their back and forth? Because that's the longest running joke in this is they just constantly make fun of each other.
I mean, I just think it's kind of weird that you have Jason Statham trying to do action comedy. I mean, he can do the action pretty well.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But the comedy, it's kind of hit or miss.
Oh yeah.
Now, obviously, The Rock, he's a great comedic actor. Like he's got the chops for it. But but even then, like you said, I mean, you just can't believe that there's any chemistry between them, right? Because even when they're having the back and forth bantering, it's like it just feels forced. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's grating. It's grating to hear them try to pretend like they're like one-upping each other. It was so hard to listen to. Like the first time it happened, I was like, okay, sure. And then, by the 20th line of dialogue where they're just doing it again, I'm like, I'm out. Like this is just not enjoyable anymore. Let's move on and to do something else. So we do get this set up where both of them have to reluctantly work together to find Hattie, who's kind of undercover. And because they can't work together, they decide that they're going to have different ways of capturing her. Hobbs's route I found particularly interesting. So he uses, I guess, like the camera system that's there to figure out where she is. And the camera just kind of knows where there's blind spots in where the camera sees stuff. I'm like, why do you have blind spots? And why would this system that you're working on know all the blind spots are? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Like you're going to have all these cameras out there, but then there's going to be noticeable blind spots that the system understands. Why not just put more cameras there? Like why have blind spots? I understand that you're trying to show like you have this big arm into everything, but it just seems so silly that you're going to blatantly point out the fact that there's blind spots in your technology and you don't do anything to fix it. I just, it was so stupid to me seeing that. But I guess Hobbs is able to use, his brain power to figure out where she is, and she's able to capture Hattie, where Jason Statham, I guess, goes to like the apartment or wherever she was. I guess everyone else thought the same thing too, and there's just a random battle where, of course, Jason Statham kills or renders everyone unconscious, whatever you want to say. So that's kind of how it opens up. with our leads finally getting together, and we see this kind of once again talking about a lack of chemistry, right? The Rock and Vanessa Kirby have negative chemistry. Like it's like the most unbelievable thing ever to see those two trying to say that they have chemistry. So we have like the interrogation sequence, right, um, where Hobbs is trying to sit there and find out about the virus and what's happening, and we find out we got Hobbs' daughter that calls them during this interrogation, right? Because when we have all this stuff on the line, the world's got this giant virus out there that could kill everybody. We need to have a conversation with our daughter, who starts talking about flirting with her dad, which was very odd to me. And I was just like, why is this little girl talking about how people flirt to her dad? I'm pretty sure the dad knows what flirting is, and I don't think we need to have this type of weird cutesy conversation. I know they try to make it funny because Hattie's trying to break out in the background, so you see it all kind of happening while there's this random conversation going on, and it just doesn't do anything. And we kind of have all that fun stuff happening, and we got Shaw shows up finally, and we get the reveal that Hattie and Shaw are brother and sister. I didn't know why that was necessary. Did you feel like there was? Did you feel like them being brother and sister really added anything to the story, or anything to go with how they acted as two characters acting off of each other?
I mean, I kind of didn't get the chemistry, from Jason Statham or Vanessa Kirby either. It's
Yeah.
like it's like the entire movie, everybody's mismatched, right?
Yes.
I mean, they're all trying so hard to play off each other, but it's like there's no give. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, you can't see any chemistry between Hobbs and Shaw, but you also can't see any chemistry between Shaw and his sister. It's like if they say it, if they say it, she's my sister long enough, then yeah, the audience will definitely have to believe it because he keeps saying it over and over again. I mean, did you notice that in the movie too? Like he kept saying, "Yeah,
Yeah.
she's my sister. She's my sister." I'm like, "Yeah, we get that. Like, we firmly established that at the very beginning. I mean, you don't
Got
need
to
to
beat
keep
it over
telling
our
us that."
heads with it.
Yeah, exactly. With that cricket bat.
Hmm.
But also the fact that that later on when they're on Samoa, and Hobbs makes her promise that they once they get over this, they go and try to fix the mistakes of their past, and she kisses him. It's like, okay, that felt kind of forced right there, right there. I mean, there's nothing organic about that. There was nothing that the situation that called for her to do that.
No.
But you also remember too, when Hobbs grabs her from that dune buggy and swings her into the cab, and she kind of mounts him. That's like one of the most
Yes.
awkward. That was like one of the most awkward shots right there, right? Because there was nothing that was building up to it, and then they insert that in, and it's like, okay, well, I know you guys are saying that there's chemistry in there, but there isn't anything. It's just a bunch of
Yep.
people who just happen to get smashed into this crazy situation, and they're trying to make the
Yep.
best of it.
Yeah, you try to force like this physical interaction with them just for the sake of them trying to show this blossoming relationship that's not really going anywhere.
No, and it doesn't go anywhere after the movie either.
No,
So
no. Well, I don't know. Maybe like I think that there's supposed to be, I don't know, some type of other type of spinoff, but I don't really know. So, but yes, there's not a whole lot that ever comes of this, but I'm not exactly in tune with the Fast and Furious universe at this stage.
yeah,
So I'll kind of hold off on any judgment on that, because I don't know if she ever shows up again or what. But yeah, so we have this kind of sequence where we kind of see everyone fighting, and then we kind of see Brixton, right? Idris Elba's the villain, right? He shows up to the CIA building, and captures Hattie, and they inexplicably decide that the best way to get out of there is to kind of like run down the side of the building on these ropes. And I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this. Like, wouldn't you just use like a helicopter or something? Like, I felt like that would have made a lot more sense as far as the getaway, but sure, we're just gonna go down this giant building. And this is where the suspension of disbelief totally broke for me. And I understand the Fast and Furious, this is a very normal thing. I realize we can't take it super seriously. But this is where it just kind of got into the realm of, oh, this is totally ridiculous. Because we have Hobbs, who's like, okay, well, we're going to go after the sister. So the best way to do that is I'm going to kind of like just jump and hang on to this rope with my bare hands. And I don't know about you, and I don't know anything about this rope, right? So if we have any rope experts that listen to us, right, maybe you can chime in with whatever you feel like it is. But I'm pretty sure if you were just in free fall and you're hanging on to this rope, I'm pretty sure your hand would totally be destroyed after a few seconds. Like that friction would just rip the skin off of his hand. So I don't know. That's just me. But he's sliding down this rope, chasing after people as Shaw, he disables the elevator, and now that's in free fall. So you got them going after it. And I like how Hobbs is just like, you know what? I'm going too slow. I'm just gonna like release myself from the rope, and I'm just gonna dive at the villains down below. And it's just silly. It just looks bad. It looks goofy. Like he could have like made it at least semi-reasonable, but you just decided to go totally off the wall bonkers. And that's pretty much how it continues, because pretty much Brixton is they're able, or I guess Hobbs and Shaw are able to get Hattie back. And then Brixton kind of follows them on the world's most interesting bike. The bike is like a transformer, and it just kind of does what I guess ever he thinks about, because it just seems to magically fold into stuff. So I don't know. How would you explain the bike to anybody that's watching this or trying to understand the specialty of this bike?
I'm just gonna say it's a Fast and Furious Transformers crossover, because that's the only thing that makes sense about this. Really,
because the bike just does whatever. It's just like, oh yeah, it's just gonna kind of fall apart. It's just gonna reassemble, and I'm like, okay, I guess this is what we're doing now.
I mean, it's not the first time the bike does that, because it does it later on. We're at the Etion facility, but I did want to say what was just so weird was the fact that Hobbs, after hanging onto the rope for a little bit, he decides to let go and just slams into one of the guys. Yeah, and then he's just like hopping from one guy to another, and I'm like
leapfrog.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, that cannot realistically happen, given the fact that he's falling at a very quick rate. And I'm fairly certain, and if there are any physicists who are watching out there, please let us know. I'm pretty sure he would have been a stain on the sidewalk by that point.
Oh, sure. Yes.
Like there's no way to realistically do the things that he, especially for a guy that size. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just think the whole thing is just a huge, unbelievable, mess. And it's one of those things where, as you've said in previous reviews, it's one of those times where you have to suspend your belief, because if you think about it too much, you're seriously going to suffer a terrible, terrible migraine.
No, if you think of it at all, not too much, if you think about it at all.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just one of those things where, one impossibility just keeps getting stacked on top of another before you just realize, you know what? I mean, it is what it is, right? Let's just appreciate the fact that you've got 3 people jammed into this car that can barely fit one person, and they're speeding around London while Brixton is riding a transformer who's making a cameo appearance in the Fast and Furious movie, with plans to do a FF and Transformer crossover at some point in the future. I don't know.
I don't know. Definitely not the crossover I think I was expecting, but I guess this is where we're at. So
yeah, exactly.
But you know, like there's a chase sequence. Obviously, the heroes have to get away, otherwise the story would end. And this is where, you know, after one incredibly dumb action sequence, we have to follow up with some really painfully stupid dialogue and reasoning, and just they don't know how the writers don't know how to progress the story in any type of intelligent way, like anything that actually makes sense. So they just kind of just start throwing shit at you that has really it's just so far-fetched, it's hard to wrap my head around. So first, this villain group that it just Brixton works with. So this group that he works with, I guess, has some type of massive control over media, and they're able to pretty much be like, hey, you know, The Rock, Jason Statham, Vanessa Kirby, they're all bad people. And this happens like moments after this little giant car chase sequence happens in the streets, right? So immediately they're put on everything out there that, you know, these people are bad people, and they're like, okay, well, that's bad, but we need to figure out we need to figure out how to get this virus out of Hattie because she injected herself, and you know, she has this ticking clock death that's going to happen if the virus is not out of her. So they need to find the scientist, right? And do you remember how they find the scientist, Luca? I want to see how much you're paying attention to this very critical story moment. How do they find the scientist?
Oh, they just basically go to a newsstand and wait for him to pick up his newspaper.
It's just like, it is the stupidest line. It's like the most throwaway nonsense I've ever seen in my life. It's just like, oh, we need to find it. Oh, he's got this Russian newspaper, and there's only one place in all of London that sells it. And I'm like, movie, come on. Like, and we're supposed to pretend like Shaw somehow knows this. Like, he's not even like Russian, where it would make sense that, like, oh, you know, I used to pick up this as, you know, my Russian background. There's nothing like that, right? He just somehow knows that there's one stand in all of London that sells this one Russian newspaper that the scientist always goes to. And, you know, we get that, and it hurt my brain. And we meet the scientist, and the scientist, you know, he tries to be funny and say, well, there's two ways that we could deal with the situation. One is we burn Vanessa Kirby, just burn her to death. And I guess this was supposed to be humorous because it's like out of left field. It just was kind of dumb. But that goes with a lot of the dialogue in this. So instead of that, there's a single machine that's able to extract this virus out, which is what they decide to do. So we have, you know, we're kind of like on the next leg of our main mission now. So we got our side quest done. Now we need to get back to figure out some stuff. So we got them. They're having to travel, and they have to travel commercially. And I find it so funny that as they're checking in, right? And keep in mind, they're fugitives, right? Their faces been plastered everywhere, right? Hattie, she has like kind of a different haircut. She's got this, you know, black hair. She looks very different, right? She's got like the glasses on, like she's Superman, but she actually looks different, right? So I'm like, okay, like she looks like she's trying. And then Shaw shows up, and he's like wearing a vest, and he's got like a fucking beanie on his head. And I'm sorry, we could bleep that part out.
Well, don't forget the glasses. He's also got glasses on.
Oh, okay, yes. I'm sorry, I forgot the glasses. But like, put a wig on, man. Like, you're bald. Like, that's a distinctive characteristic of you. You're not fooling anybody. Put a damn wig on, and maybe you would get out of this. And then, you know, we have Hobbs. So, and you know, no offense to The Rock, right? Like, he's gonna stick out no matter what. So I can kind of accept the fact that, you know, he's just kind of gonna be whatever. So I can suspend some disbelief for him. And I like how he gets detained, because it was a setup by Shaw for him to be detained. And then he just kind of shows up on the airplane 5 minutes later. And I'm like, okay, why? What was the purpose to adding this in? Does it do anything? I don't know how he can talk his way out of any of that stuff.
You're forgetting. Well, you're forgetting. He was supposed to say my cock's small.
Yes, well, that's his name, and they say it 1,000 times because they think it's the greatest joke ever.
Yeah,
his name is Mike's cock small. So
yeah, best thing since sliced bread, apparently. So
Yes, right. So like we never heard of any jokes like that. Like we haven't seen The Simpsons hasn't been doing that joke for decades now. But you know that was what they were going for. So we got this nice interaction with them on the plane. On the plane. Kevin Hart's there, right? So we get a nice little Kevin Hart cameo. You know, he obviously makes fun of himself because that tends to be what he does. And you know, we got this setup now where we're trying to get to this plant in Chernobyl, right? So this is where the virus extracting device is. It's in some lab in Chernobyl. So we have obviously our characters parachute in to this facility, and you know, with everything, there's obviously a bunch of nameless henchmen that they're able to beat up, and they're able to, I guess, find the machine, right? And this is where we get another, I guess, classic chase sequence. And this is where you brought up, right, where they're all trying to break out of this, and we have this really awkward moment where Hattie kind of straddles the rock, and it kind of quickly ends. And I really, it drives me crazy when things just inexplicably happen the best way possible for the heroes. So like there's that giant, what would you call that? What's that giant structure that's kind of falling, like a smokestack or something?
yeah, it's a
No,
smokestack.
yeah,
Yeah.
like a giant smokestack, right? It's falling. So it falls onto this truck perfectly where it's able to not only throw Brixton away, but it doesn't impact any of the other three heroes. Now, granted, it does destroy the device, so you know the heroes are saved, the device is destroyed, and the villain's gone, and all that happens because this just magically kind of drops at just the right time to, you know, not kill anybody, but not resolve the story. Because if that's all that happened, you know, she would have been able to get the device out or the virus out, and we would have been all okay. And this is kind of where I realized, like, poor Vanessa Kirby's here, and she's like acting her ass off, right? Like she's sitting there, like she's bringing her A game to this. That she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna die." I'm like, "You're in a Hobbs and Shaw movie, Vanessa Kirby. You don't have to try this hard." But she's really out there crying, and then like seeing her act next to The Rock and especially Jason Statham was just pathetic to me. How much more she feels like she's putting into this effort. Did you ever come across, like, I know we don't talk a lot about like acting skill a whole lot, but what did you kind of feel about seeing these three act, and did you feel like one of them really stuck out as far as their, I guess, acting prowess?
Well, I mean, like I said before, I mean, Jason Statham, he can do the action, but he can't do the comedy, right? And then The Rock, well, he pretty much feels pretty comfortable doing comedy, but as well as doing action. But I feel, but I feel like overall everybody was kind of like, I mean, they were just running it on half empty, really, because they knew this isn't a movie that's going to win the Oscars or anything like that. So why even bother?
True.
And I kind of feel like with Vanessa Kirby, I feel like she's always on, like no matter what movie she's doing, and I applaud her for that because she's committed to the role. But to your point, it's one of those times where you kind of just have to say, hey, this isn't going to be nominated for a Golden Globe or anything. You don't have to try that hard. I mean, just take it for what it is. It's just a silly movie about some robot man who apparently can survive being crushed by tons and tons of falling bricks.
Yeah.
Now that being said, I'll also say too that that Hobbs and Shaw are definitely playing to the machismo stereotype of the strong, silent type who doesn't show any emotion. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So so obviously they can't express too much emotion because they're trying to keep it together and they want to show that they're tough guys who can get the job done at the end of the day.
That's right. Men showing emotions weak, so we can't have them show any of that. They got to
exactly.
be up and stoic the whole time. Otherwise, like, we're just gonna be like, oh, they're just a bunch of pansies now. So, so yeah, so the device is destroyed, and now we have our last leg of this movie where it's like, okay, well, now we need to go to Hobbs' family because Hobbs's brother, estranged brother, right, is going to be able to fix this. Now, why did they feel like the family had to have discourse? I have no idea, because literally it just kind of was there for a second, and then the mom's like, hey, we got to treat him right, like he's family, and the family's like, okay, that makes sense, and that's pretty much it. Like, there's just nothing for it, so it's just I don't get why you add the family drama in. Like, it doesn't bring anything to the table. It's like clearly the brother's not gonna not help him. Like, I'm not like that would have been an interesting turn in the movie if like Haas brings this in and the brother's like, nope, we're not gonna do it, and then they have to go find something else. Like, maybe that would have been interesting, but you want to create this drama, but the drama doesn't do anything, and that it just feels like pointless filler in something that's a little bit over 2 hours. Probably one of those things that we could have cut out and probably got people out of the theater a little bit quicker. But they have this, little bit of a spat there, and then they come to terms with it. They need to, they need to help create this protective barrier around the house or whatever they're making their stand, because the villains are coming. But they need time to get the virus out. And I like how we just kind of run into all these arbitrary like deadlines and time frames now, because like, Hattie only has so long to live. The machine that extracts the virus from her, it takes 30 minutes to filter out. Why does it take 30 minutes? No idea. Like, I realize that there's probably not a lot of things out there that are doing this, but I guess 30 minutes was what they came up with. And then because they had like some weapon from their other encounter, they're able to disable the villain's weapons for 6 minutes. Like, I just was like, what are we doing? Like, we're just like making shit up. Like, why is it that you have a gun and you're somehow able to set the gun up that's going to disable all the villains' guns? Like, we just did an Independence Day review, right, where we have aliens that were hit by a virus and it makes zero sense. Here we are like decades later, and it's just like, oh yeah, she's just like hack the gun and we could just disable how the guns work. Like, I just was floored. I'm like, y'all are not even trying anymore. Like, this is dumb as shit. Like, how did you feel? Like, just back, where are we with this with you?
Well, all she needed was a glove, and that was all she needed.
It's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And from that one glove, she was able to hack into the system and disable the weapons for 6 minutes.
It's just
it's like really, like, that's all it took.
Like, writing team, like, come up with something else, writing team, please. Like, come up with something else. Like, you could have been like, get Ryan Reynolds involved. Be like, hey, he's some tech guy. We could have him get involved, and he's like, what, this is the best I could do. I'll destroy like one of their satellites, and it'll give you 6 minutes. Like, just anything other than this, right? Because it just seems absolutely bonkers how little effort went into this. Like, you're just creating all these like random deadlines to hit to create tension, but the tension, you don't feel any of the tension because it just is ridiculous how they're getting there.
Yeah, it's forced, basically.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like with everything else in the movie.
So. Yes, yeah. Forrest is putting it nicely. So, so the villains show up, right? You got Hobbs, and you have Hobbs's big extended family, who are all these like jack-looking Samoa people, because of course they are, right? So we got all these, people. They just have this kind of like fist fight between the two, because remember, the villains have 6 minutes where they can't use the weapons. So instead of like maybe waiting for the weapons to get reactivated or something, they're like, no, we're just gonna have fisticuffs with everybody. So they just kind of have all this happening. And Hattie, right, who's, I would say we've seen her, she has like physical prowess, right? Like, she could fight, right? We've seen her do it. So I find it really weird to me that they have her, so she's got this device on, right, that's extracting it out. And they try to show that she's disoriented from the device, right? So I guess is like it's siphoning the blood out and taking away the virus, like it's making her disoriented.
Well, hold on, because you remember earlier, Brixton gets into the chopper, and as he's flying around, he's basically just blowing shit up, and he blows up that little area that Hattie and Shaw are in, and as they're trying to come to their senses, that I think that's what's causing her to be disoriented.
Oh, was that the part? Sorry, I totally blacked out that stage. I totally was okay. So
Yeah, yeah,
fine,
yeah.
whatever, right? So she's all disoriented, and I like how she just kind of walks. She just kind of walks up to the villain's helicopter that lands there, and I'm like, you know, like don't make her like this pathetic damsel in distress, right? Like, okay, sure, like I understand now. I guess that was a part where my brain just stopped working for a few seconds. My brain cells were not firing in that moment, and they were just like, I can't deal with it anymore. So I don't remember that specifically, but if you're trying to protect this person, right, and she has this, device that's on her that she has to keep away for damage, right? Because we've already seen the device get destroyed before. Why is she out on the front lines? Like, give her like something to do, like away from everything. Like, just don't have her out there because she just kind of like just walks into the villain's hands, and it was totally bonkers. Like, I'm just like, oh, they're
Yeah,
not even
it's kind
trying
of,
anymore.
it kind of reminded me of that scene from Avengers Infinity War where where Vision decides, you know what, I'm instead of being in this tower where they're trying to get the stone from me, I'm just gonna wander all the way to where Captain America is, help him out. Oh, and there's Thanos, and he rips the stone out of his head.
Yep. That's a good analogy. I like that one. So yeah, that's pretty much what we're seeing in front of our eyes unfolding.
Well,
And
that's a mention too. Like that thing is extracting the virus, and let's remember, Etion is after the virus.
yes,
So like once they get the virus, I mean, they can pretty much do whatever they want to Hattie. So
yeah, yeah. So literally everything just kind of falls into their hands, pretty much literally. Uh, and so of course, Hobbs and Shaw, they see Hattie get taken away in the helicopter, and this was the moment, Luca. Right? We've been sitting here. I've been, struggling with how utterly ridiculous I'm watching everything unfold. It's just ridiculous. And then we have this sequence with the helicopter, and it totally broke my brain. I think I laughed for about 5 minutes straight as I was watching it.
oh
I
really?
just
Oh really? Because I was sitting there with my jaw hanging open, like, what the fuck am I watching here?
I was I was laughing, like I was just like howling at this because of how utterly stupid it was. So, we need a chase sequence where now we have a bunch of vehicles chasing after a helicopter. So we have uh, Hobbs. He kind of uses some chains that he ropes his vehicle to the helicopter, right? So we have that going for you. So it looks like they're trying to break out and everything, and it looks like, oh no, maybe they're gonna pick up the back of the truck, or maybe they're gonna like take it off a cliff or something. But then his brother starts showing up, and then you have this weird like line of cars, right? And I think there was like 3 or 4 cars that are attached to each other, where they just like throw change and winches and whatever on these things, so they're all connected, right? So you got like this weird like car centipede thing going here, where they're all connected to try to keep this from this helicopter from getting away. And of course they use nos because it's a Fast and a Furious thing, so they're just like, oh yeah, by the way, we got nos, let's just use it for whatever reason now, because we're in a Fast and Furious. And somehow these 3 vehicles all chained together are able to bring the helicopter out. Now, granted, in reality, like I don't know, this helicopter could it have like handled all the weight from the one vehicle? Probably not. I have no idea, but it just looks damn stupid to have all these cars just like linked to each other, trying to do all this stuff. And as I said, that whole sequence, I was laughing my ass off. Just the whole time. So
Well, there was briefly a moment of reality when they swing around that corner and they come close to falling off the cliff, but somehow they don't, and they manage to stay on the road. And I'm like, oh, they
yeah,
they
one of the
briefly had it for a
vehicles
moment.
barely has one of the vehicles barely has any tires on the ground. The other ones are just
Exactly, yeah, they're
off.
just
They're
hanging
just
up
like,
in the air.
yeah, they're just in the air, right? They're just out, like they have no traction. There's nothing they could do. They're literally spinning their wheels, right? That's literally what they're doing. But they're like, nah, man, like we got this, and it's just we'll just pull the plane on, pull the helicopter, excuse me, back on. And yeah, so they bring the helicopter down. Of course, everyone is safe after the incident, because when the helicopter crashes, Hattie's okay, a random henchman's okay, Brixton's okay, Hobbs and Shaw okay. So Hobbs and Shaw have their final fight against Brixton, right? This person that has these like machine, like he's like gotten all these augments, right? And
Yeah, he's basically the $6 million man.
yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Like I think they described him as like a Terminator one time, or Black Superman. Like they have all these really fun things that they use to describe him. But I guess two guys could just punch him to death, and that's okay. And that's what ends up happening is they beat him in this fight. There's this voice that's kind of been prevalent in it. That's kind of over Brixton, right? And I guess he kind of disables Brixton. This voice does kind of disables him and kills him, and Hattie is getting the rest of her virus out, and she's okay, and we get this nice happy ending where they survive, and the three of them get to go off and make another shitty movie. And that's that. So that is Hobbs and Shaw. So I guess, Luca, got anything you would like to add upon this discussion before we go to our final verdicts?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's one of those movies where you just have to keep reminding yourself, don't take it seriously. It's just it's just another shitty movie from the Fast and Furious franchise. but at the same time, it's like, as much as you want to detach yourself from it, there are moments like that chase sequence you mentioned earlier where it's like you can't disengage from it. Like it just drags you in. Like it wants you to care about it to the point that it will do stupid things. It reminds me of little kids where they'll do just about anything to get their parents' attention, right? Even if it means climbing up onto the roof with cardboard wings and saying, "Hey, mom and dad, look, I can fly." That's what this movie is like. It's like that little kid who will do just about anything to get your attention, right? So, I could say there are just so many crazy things about this movie, but at this point, it's just beating a dead horse, really.
Yes. You jump from like one ridiculous action sequence to another ridiculous one, and it just increases the ridiculousness every time, where it's just like, okay, I guess you're slowly trying to suspend my disbelief. Like I think if you do it too early, the audience just totally checks out. But I guess if you slowly get to it, you kind of just like accept the bizarreness of it. But for myself, it's like we've seen this time and time again, right? Like literally these Fast and Furious movies are built on this giant spectacle, right? It's a super popular franchise. And I totally fine with people enjoying that stuff, right? Like everyone has different tastes and stuff. Some people just love just the crazy action pieces, and they definitely do it in these movies. My main issue and what my challenge is, at least for myself, is it didn't do anything different that we haven't seen 1,000 times from this same franchise. There's nothing unique about it. Like these characters, when they come together, I didn't really care about any of these characters. Like, oh yeah, I remember Hobbs was in like one or two of them. Shaw was in one or two of them. I believe Vanessa Kirby was totally new as Hattie's character. So like none of these characters are like really interesting that we really care about, and just seeing them interact with each other is just pathetic. And the dialogue is just terrible. Like the writers just don't even feel like they are even trying to make any type of sensible plot. It's just like, well, it's just a crazy action film. We'll just kind of throw a whole bunch of random shit in there to connect everything. And I'm like, no, like you don't have to do that. Just because it's a crazy action thing, either go all in for that, but at least you can make some of the stuff that you do a little bit sensible. Like just give us a little iota of, hey, we're going to just make something plausible for them to do this. And the problem is that they just continuously miss it again and again and again. And it just, like I said, it totally sucked me out of it from really early on in the process. But the ending was definitely just beyond baffling to me. So I guess my final score for this is I'm just gonna give it a 2. Like I'm sure it's worse than that, but I mean, if you're interested in seeing some globe-trotting, car action sequences, it's got some of that stuff. If you're into more, I guess, realistic or reasonable stuff, um, your head's gonna explode at some stage with it because it's just totally all over the place. But I can certainly understand where some of it is. I mean, I like these characters by themselves. I like The Rock. I think he's, a cool guy. I really like Vanessa Kirby. I like Idris Elba. Jason Statham is, like you pointed out earlier, he's a great action star. Like, I think these people independently can do this stuff. I just feel like the writing and the story was just so bad that even people that can excel in certain areas just had no opportunity to do it. And we got this, just random notch in the Fast and the Furious belt of their, nearly, I mean, including spin-offs and stuff, they have to have over a dozen films. And it's just like, this is not the universe I want to be a part of. So please get me out of this as soon as possible. So, but that's my thoughts. Luca, hit us with it.
I'm just going to give it a 1.9 out of 5. Now, I will say this. I've never really been a fan of the Fast and Furious franchise. And it's one of those franchises where, you watch it and you just forget about it. Because there's nothing original about it apart from, the very first film, right?
Yeah.
It's just building up on tropes that we've seen in cinema before and just repackaging them in, in their own way. It's kind of like that South Park joke where Carlos Mencia says, "I just steal jokes from other people and repackage them in a Mexican accent." That's basically what they do here. And Hobbs and Shaw could easily be any other spy film, but they've just repackaged it under the FF franchise and said, "Hey, look, we came up with something new. I mean, you thought we couldn't do spy films? Well, we're doing one right now." The only thing that I found funny was Kevin Hart's appearance in the movie, because the 2 times that he was in it, I thought he did a phenomenal job. Especially when he was making that joke about being stuck inside a can of farts all day long, and then and then that joke where he's like, "Yeah, I'm here in the office," and you hear like some guy flushing in the stall next to him. I thought that was pretty good. But yeah,
even Kevin Hart for me couldn't save it. It felt like, I mean, literally toilet humor.
But like, at least it was something new, right?
Of course, yes, yeah, yes. I totally understand. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, at least that was something we haven't seen before, so that's so I will give them that. But besides that point, it's like there's really nothing about this movie that would just make me say, I've got nothing to do on a Saturday afternoon. I think I'm gonna watch, Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw. I am not tempted whatsoever about that. But yeah, let's go ahead and let us know down in the comments below what your thoughts are for Fast and Furious movies and for Hobbs and Shaw. If you think it's one of the better movies of the franchise, or if you just wish they would just stop, like with the MCU and everything else. But yeah, for the Movie Pope podcast, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next review. Bye.